Welcome to Lecture 2.2, and we'll go over physical growth, maturation, and aging. This lecture will primarily focus on the changes taking place during the developmental stages, and the following lecture will outline how different body systems change throughout the process of development. The main topics that we're going to cover today are prenatal growth, abnormal prenatal development, postnatal development, and the basic tools that we use to assess growth. So here's the general concept. We observe patterns of growth and aging and experience the duality of universality and specificity. Universality being that patterns hold true for all humans, and specificity is the individual variation that exists. Educators and therapists can make tasks developmentally appropriate based on the universality and specificity. To start, we're going to cover prenatal growth. And there are three main stages of prenatal growth that take place: germinal, embryonic, and fetal growth. Germinal growth occurs from conception to 2 weeks, embryonic growth occurs from 2 weeks to 8 weeks, and fetal growth occurs from 8 weeks to birth. So prior to the development of modern technology, we often relied on artist renditions that would artistically represent the process of human development. Back in the 17th century, it was believed that the human sperm contained a little miniature human that would begin to grow once it entered the ovum, or the egg. Honestly, it's a little absurd, but this slide is put in there just to show us how far we have come from this concept of a mini human living inside of the sperm. We now know that it's DNA. Like I said, unlike the artist rendition, the sperm does not contain a mini human, but rather contains the DNA from the father of the child. Once the sperm makes contact with the egg, it literally screws itself into the egg, and chemical processes occur that prevent other sperm from entering the egg. This is important because we want the embryo to have the correct number of chromosomes, and if multiple sperms enter the egg, we will not have the correct number. This is a very cool picture that shows us the image of the first cell division, and this takes place around 30 hours after conception. By the time we reach day 2 of after conception, there are 4 cells. The first 10 days of growth and cell division are known as germinal growth, and the fertilized egg travels through the fallopian tube and plants on the uterine wall during this time. The germinal stage ends when implantation occurs. While the germinal stage is supposed to be from conception to 10 days, we generally say that it occurs from conception to 2 weeks because there is a little bit of variation in the time of implantation after the actual conception. So for the purposes of this class and for your exam, germinal growth, conception to 2 weeks. After implantation, we start the embryonic growth. The embryonic stage is the next stage to occur, and it takes place after implantation, so from about 2 to 8 weeks. During this stage, differentiation of cells occurs to form specific tissues and organs. The growth takes place via hyperplasia and hypertrophy, where the number of cells increases as well as the size of the cells increases. The growth occurs cephalocaudally, meaning from head to lower body, and occurs proximodistally, meaning that the development of the trunk occurs before the development of the limbs. This is also the time when the fetus is most susceptible to teratogens, which can negatively impact growth. We will discuss the teratogens later on in this lecture. The next 2 slides will show us pictures of the human fetus throughout the process of development in the embryonic stage. We can see here this is the neural tube, and this portion will eventually become the head, and the neural tube is basically the central nervous system. We see at around 26 days, the head is a little bit more distinguished, and the heart starts beating around 18 days. At about 3.5 weeks, there is a slight shape of the head, and there's also a heart. At around 4 weeks, it still looks like a fish, but it starts to take more human-like form, with there being a semblance of an eye as well as an arm bud being formed. By the end of the 5th week, we can see fingers, and the fetus is about 11 to 12 millimeters long at this point. 6 weeks, it does begin to look a little bit more human-like still. And at 6.5 weeks, we can see the eyes. And the eyes close around 9 weeks, and they open again at 7 months after they've been more fully developed. During this time also, there is the formation of the bone cells. The next stage that occurs is fetal development, which occurs from 8 weeks to birth. This occurs by continued hyperplasia and hypertrophy, and growth continues to occur in the cephalocaudal and proximodistal direction. During this period, there's a plasticity of cells as they can develop into organs and take on a variety of functions. We'll take a break here, and we will start in the next lecture about abnormal prenatal development.